a little background on this week's project. I wanted to create a subdivision project because I think it's important that you folks know about it. I don't personally do a lot of subdivision work, so I was looking for some inspiration on what the project should be, and I ran across one of Vectorworks marketing videos from last year. Every year when they release the new version, they release these marketing videos where they show someone who is creating or supposedly creating something in Vectorworks using the various tools. In reality, they're sort of deep fakes. I'm not even sure they're actually created in Vectorworks. Vectorworks also owns Cinema 4D, which is a super high-end 3D modeling and rendering program, and I suspect a lot of the work is done in Cinema 4D. But every year when their videos are released, the online user community sort of asks them if they would please release a tutorial or something showing how they did what they did in the video, and they never do, because when you see the video, you'll see them doing things with a single click that are actually multiple step processes. So I found this project from them from last year that's a relatively simple, I think, subdivision wall, and I decided to see if I could decipher from the limited clues in the video how they did it. So watch this. This is what we're going to be creating this week. Just bear in mind that many of the things that are done with one click ultimately actually take many steps. But our final project will be this orange wall and the documentation at the end with the multiple views of the wall. So here's the video. So that's the project, and we'll get started. We'll start in a new Vectorworks file by going to Model and creating a subdivision primitive. We're going to create a cube that is 12 inches or 1 foot square with the iteration set to 0. So cube, 12 inches, 0. We'll place it here, and I'm in right isometric and OpenGL right now. The first thing I want to do is turn this 12 by 12 by 12 cube into a 12 by 18 by 18 cube. So in the 3D palette, select the Edit Subdivision tool and use the first mode, which is the transform mode. Click on this face, and you'll get this exciting looking widget. Start to drag the blue arrow in this direction and then hit tab and enter 6. So we move that 6 inches in that direction, which changes that overall dimension from 12 inches to 18 inches. And then we're going to do the same thing in this direction. So click on this face, and I just had to click once to finish that, and then click again here. Start to move this out and tab 6, enter, enter. So now we have our basic overall cube, and this wall is going to be made up of 8 columns and 8 rows of divisions that are this size. So I just wanted to start with this shape so that we knew what our divisions were going to be. Now I'm going to turn this into the overall size of the wall. So you didn't necessarily have to do that first step. You could have just gone on to what I was doing right now, but I just wanted to make it clear what sort of our base divisions are going to be. So I'm going to go back to Edit Subdivision and click here. And this time we're going to move in this direction, and we want to tab and do 126 inches. Our overall length is 144 inches. We already had 18 inches. So we move 126 inches to get our overall length. And then if we click here and start to drag up and tab 84 inches. So that is our overall block to begin. So right now this is one big subdivision, and what we need is our subdivision to be subdivided. So in order to do that, we'll go to Edit Subdivision, and it was really interesting in that video where they did this with one click. I believe there are some mesh modelers where you can do this with 1 or 2 clicks. It's going to take us a number of clicks to do it in Vectorworks. So you're going to go to the split mode and click on this line and tab 50. So we're putting that right in the middle. And then we're going to do that again, tab 50, to split the left side in half. And then we're going to also hit return there. Do that again, tab 50, and then return, and then return, and then tab 50 here as well. So we just keep splitting it in half. So then we'll do it again down here, click there, tab 50, and here, tab 50, and here, tab 50. All right, so that gets our 8 columns. Now to do our 8 rows, we'll just do the same thing down the side. So we'll click here, tab 50, return, click here, tab 50, tab 50, tab 50. And if you don't want a specific number, you can just eyeball it, but I actually want a specific number here. I want to keep splitting it in half. Tab 50, and finally tab 50. So I now should have a subdivision that is made up of 8 columns by 8 rows. Next, we're going to switch to front view and start subtracting or deleting faces in order to get to this shape. So these aqua faces are going to be deleted. So I'm going to make sure that I'm in the transform mode. I'm going to select this space, click once and hit delete, and then now this is the back space, so click once and hit delete. So let's go to a isometric view, and you can see what actually you can't see. What actually happened is there's a hole there now. The front division is gone and the back division is gone. So that's what we're doing. So back to front. Okay. We'll go back to Edit Subdivision. We'll click here, delete, here, delete, delete, delete. me go back and check the picture. So 2 rows of 3, and then 1 row of 3, and then 3 rows of 3. So back to here. So delete, 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 delete. I'm going to stop saying delete. All right, I'm going to go to isometric, and you can sort of see what's going on there. You can see it better in this view. So now what we need to do is connect these faces to turn this hollow shape back into a filled shape. So back to edit subdivision, and now we're going to use the bridge mode in the connect mode. So when you hover over one of the lines, it will turn red. So you click there and then click here and it will bridge across. So we're just going to go around this opening and bridge all of the open faces. For those of you who use SketchUp, this is has some similarities to the way SketchUp works here. I'm going to go to that view and back to my bridging. This is also something they did with one click in the video. I think I've got one more. Okay, so now we should be, please don't show that again. We should be nice and filled in now. So next we want to start doing some of the deforms. So I'm going to go to isometric so I can see what I'm doing. Back to edit subdivision. And what I want to do is select the entire third column in and move it back. So in order to do that, I will go to the transform mode, and I'm going to click and drag over all of the corners of this column. And in order to do that, I need to get out of strict isometric for a minute, because it's going to be hard for me to select this without selecting this. So we're going to go more like that, and then back to edit subdivision. Now I should be able to click here and drag over and select all of the points of this third column. And once I do that, I get this widget. So I'm going to click on the blue and start moving backwards, and then tab, we're going to go back minus 18 inches. So we have that deform. Then we're going to do the same thing with the third column on this side, only we're going to come forward 18 inches. So I'm going to click and drag over all of that column, and then click on the blue arrow and pull forward and type tab 18. So now we have this shape. So far so good. Let's check our picture. So we've done the curve. Now what we want to do is grab the second line up and pull it out, and then grab the third division down and pull it out. So third line from the bottom, and then third division from the top. Let's do the third line from the bottom first. So I'm in front view now. So I'm going to go back to select that and go back to edit subdivision and make sure that I'm in the transform mode. And then I'm going to drag over and select all of this line. And then I'm going to go to isometric so I can see what I'm doing. Now, this widget, because of the way this is formed, is going to not pull straight out in the direction that I'm going to pull. So what I really need is the widget right here. So in order to get the widget right there, I'm going to hold down Shift and deselect that point. And then I'm going to reselect that point. The widget always goes to the last point selected. So I deselected the corner with Shift held down, and then I reselected the corner with Shift held down. So now I have the widget where I want it. And I can click on the green and pull out. We're going to go tab 18 inches again. So there's that. And then we're going to go back to front. Now we're going to select this row of divisions, both the lines, the top and the bottom. So I'm going to click and drag over those. And then go to isometric. And I have the same problem with my widget again. It's here, and I need for it to be here. So I'm going to hold down Shift and deselect this corner. And then with Shift held down, I'm going to reselect that corner. So now I can, the widget's moved to the corner and it's facing in the right direction. I can grab the green arrow and pull it forward and type tab 18 again, and there we have that. So if you just select the lines, then the line will move. If you select the entire box, then the box will move. So here's a rough approximation of what our display wall looks like. Now we need to smooth it. So in order to do that, I'm going to right click on it and go to Properties. And then I'm going to change the iteration from 0 to 4. And it's going to think for a minute. And now we have our smoothed wall. So that's what it looks like. This one may be slightly more exaggerated in this direction than the one in the video, but I think it's fairly close. Next in the video, they went to an external texture site that links through Vectorworks, and this is a good site to know about. So if you go to File, Import mTexture, this will take you via the internet to the mTexture site, which has all kinds of textures available that you can import into Vectorworks. So you can search, you can find the texture that you like, and if you just click CAD BIM texture, it will import it directly into Vectorworks. So you should definitely take a look around this site. Unfortunately, the actual shiny polyurethane orange that they used in the video doesn't appear to be on the site anymore. I looked at every orange and there are lots of them, and that one is not here. So I'm going to say goodbye to mTexture, and we're going to create our own. So if you go to the Resource Manager, we're going to do a new resource. It's going to be a RenderWorks texture. The color is going to be a color. We're going to use the orange 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 oranges up there. Okay, and then we're going to set the reflectivity, this is what's going to make it shiny, to plastic. We're going to edit that and turn the brightness of the shine up to 100. Get rid of the roughness and add 15% reflection. So it should look like this. Whenever you have a texture that has a shine to it, you usually want to use the sphere as the preview, because if you do any of the flat surfaces, you don't really see the effect so much of the shine. So this sphere is best used for that. Since this is a solid color, the size doesn't make any difference. So color set to orange, reflectivity set to plastic, plastic edited to 100% brightness and 15% reflection. And we can call this shiny orange. Okay. So then if we select our display wall and double click, give it a second, it will turn orange. Now you're not going to see the effect of the shine in OpenGL. You have to go to one of the render modes in order to actually see that effect. It's looking a little gray in some places, but that's because of the lighting, which we'll take care of later. So there's our shiny fiberglass wall. Next up in the video, they imported this furniture from somewhere. I have looked at the various places I am aware of where you can download furniture, and I couldn't find any of this. So we're going to look at some of the built-in furniture in Vectorworks and find a couple of chairs that are not an exact match for these chairs, but at least in the spirit of this design. And then I thought this coffee table was cool enough. We're just going to build that. That's not too difficult to find. Too difficult to build. We're going to replace the coffee pot here with a tribute to the Utah teapot from last week, and then we'll do a slightly different vase. But it'll be good to explore the built-in Vectorworks furniture. I did put a link in web courses to a couple of the places that I'm aware of that you can go to download furniture files for free. There are all sorts of places where you can buy 3D files, but there are some places where you can download it for free. Looking at this picture did remind me that my orange is way orange, and this is obviously more tangerine. So we should explore a couple of things that you can adjust in the Vectorworks color picker. If we go to the resource manager and right-click on our material and edit it, and go to color and edit that, here yours probably looks like this. There are a variety of, this is the standard Vectorworks colors. There are all sorts of other color libraries that you should know about. So if you click here on Manage the Color Palettes, you'll get a whole list of different things. You can put in Benjamin Moore paints. You can put in Pantone colors for those of you who are familiar with those. There's some other things that I'm not sure what some of these are, but they're design, they're companies. I know what Rose Brand Banjo Cloth is. Because I'm a lighting designer, I actually am more familiar with lighting colors, so I'm going to turn on the lighting gel colors because I know that that orange is very similar to Roscoe 20. So now when I go back to here, I have the palette that I just added. I can go to there and I can find R20 and change it to that color orange, and that should update. So this color is much more similar to the one that's in the video than the one that I previously had made. Before we delve into the furniture, let's go ahead and create a ground for this and situate the wall. So if we go to top, we're going to create a 30-foot square ground for this. And let's just center that here. And then we're going to extrude this 0. And I'll explain why a little later when we get to the texture that we're going to put on it. But you can, in fact, extrude 0. And sort of defying logic or physics, it's still a thing that has 0 thickness, but it's still there. So there's our extruded 0. And then we're going to put the wall right here, and we're going to rotate it by grabbing onto this corner and using the lowest part of the wall as our rotation handle, and then holding down shift and rotating it, and it's going to take a minute so that it's flat from the corner to the the lowest point. That appears to be the way that it is situated in the model. The thing about the zero extrusion is if you're in a standard straight on view, so front or side, and are in any of the rendering modes except for wireframe, it doesn't show up because it has zero thickness. It will show up in wireframe. So we're going to move the wall up so that it's sitting right on the floor. So we currently have this. Go to OpenGL just so we can see what we have. All right, so next we want to look at the furniture, and what they have here are a couple of modern-looking plastic and chrome chairs, which I previously said I've looked for. I know where to find the model of them that you can pay for, but I haven't been able to find a model of these exact same chairs to download. We could actually create these chairs using the subdivision tool, but I think we've done enough subdividing, so we're just going to look in Vectorworks because I want you to see all of the furniture that's available there anyway, to find some chairs that are at least in the spirit of these chairs. So if we go to the resource manager and do a search for chair, you'll see that there are hundreds actually of chairs that are built in to Vectorworks and are available for you to use. They're inside chairs, outside chairs, chairs with tables, banquet chairs, folding chairs. There are all sorts of chairs that are available. There also are all kinds of other things that you can use to plug in. If you could search for table, you look at tables. You can look in the, without doing a search, you can look in the various folders that are available. There are speakers, audio symbols. There are let's see, probably in building services, that's probably where all of the, there are sinks and toilets and baths and showers and just all sorts of stuff that's built in here. We're going to look at in next week's project some of the specific entertainment objects that are available, but just be aware that there are all sorts of things that are here. There are some people. I'm not a huge fan of their people, but they look, there's Allison sitting. They are available. So anyway, just so you know that. So now back to chair. Back to chair, and the chair that I've decided that is the closest that's available here is this one that's called Furniture Chair Lounge. So if you want to search for that, you can, and find it, and then just double click on it. Yours will probably be white. When I originally found this chair, it was white, and I think I've made it black. So I'll show you how to do that if yours is in fact white. So I'm just going to double click to insert that into the document. Resource browser is in my way. Stop it. I'm working on a different computer this week, the one in my actual office at school. It's not quite set up the way I've been used to for 6 months. So there's our chair. This has already been turned into a symbol. I'm going to rotate this 45 degrees. And then I'm going to use the mirror tool to put one on that side, which is going to move to a different location, but now we have it there. I'm going to go to isometric and OpenGL. If your chair is white, the way you can change it is just by double clicking and editing the 3D component of the symbol, and I just went to front, grab the parts of the chair here. You'll notice that they have a texture applied, a textile white cloth, but that texture is set so that, oh look, I'm still in lighting gels. That texture is set to accept whatever color you give it in this stage. So the texture itself doesn't have a color built into it, so you can make it whatever color. And I'm setting it to the third black here, so gray 80%, so that it's not entirely black. And then also we want to edit that texture to make this shiny. So in the Resource Manager, if you go to your file and find the textile white cloth, which is the texture that's been applied to that chair, and edit it, you'll see that the object attribute is set, which means that it will accept whatever color is given to it via the attributes here. The reflectivity, I've already set mine. Yours may be nothing, but it should be set for this project to plastic, and then with a brightness of 50 and a roughness of 15. And then the bump image that's been applied to it is what gives it this sort of vinyl fake leather appearance. So if we click OK to that, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And you don't need to do this next step because it's going to take a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and render so we can see what the shininess of that texture looks like. Okay, so there's our shiny plastic, which is actually looking a little bit gray. So I'm going to change the color to slightly more black. So I'm going to select that. Make sure I select all of it, and I'm going to change it from 80% gray to 90% gray. I may have said this in another video somewhere. I'm not sure. Usually I talk about when we're modeling theaters, and we haven't gotten there yet. But if you set something to 100% black, it does something that does this in the theater wish we could do in real life. It really is 100% black. It doesn't reflect any light. If you set it to be shiny, you can get it to reflect. But if it's just black, if it's flat black, it's like a black hole. So which you can't really have in real life. When we paint things black, unfortunately, you can still see them. It would be really nice if you could have this in real life. But so I rarely set anything to 100% black. I usually use 90 or 80 to simulate real life black, which you can actually still see. So just FYI. We'll exit that symbol, and I'm not gonna render that again, but that should look better and slightly less chalky than the other color. So next up is this coffee table, which I can't find one to match anywhere really, but I think it's kind of cool and it's not that hard to make. So we're just gonna build this. We're gonna extrude the shape and then do some solid subtraction and then put a piece of glass on it. So it's actually fairly simple to make this table. It's got a little bit of a curve right here, which we're gonna ignore, just because it's a lot of work to make this slight outward curve here, and you can barely see it in the rendering, so I'm just gonna skip it. But other than that, we'll try to make a reasonable facsimile of this. So in order to do that, let's go to front and wireframe. And we're going to make a guide rectangle that is 6 feet long and 24, I think, inches high. That seems too tall. Let's try 22. Just basing it on, all right, let's try 20. I'm basing the height of the table on looking like it makes sense with the chairs, and that seems about right there. Okay, good. So 6 feet wide and 20 inches high. So then we're going to draw half of the curve using the polygon tool. So I'm going to start here in the corner, and then I'm going to go over 3/4 of an inch, so 0.75. That's going to be the thickness of the start. And then we're going to find the center, the midpoint here, and I'm going to come up from the midpoint, about there. We can always adjust this. And then come down and then back to this corner to complete. And now I can see that I was zoomed in so far. This is way off. So we're going to do let's actually draw a guide for ourselves. Let's make this 2 inches thick at the bottom. So then we can use the reshape tool in the first mode and pull that up like that. So that's probably going to be a little too thick now, but we can adjust that later. Okay, so now we're going to curve this. So back to reshape. I'm going to add a curve, and you can try out the various curves. I started with the radius first, and the radius definitely doesn't give us the right shape. I looked at the cubic, so it turns out that the Bezier seems to be the best shape because it's sort of an arc shape that's kind of like that. This is not going to look quite right at the bottom, but we're going to take care of that in a minute. So then I'm going to try to make this somewhat parallel. So like that. So there's a rough shape. Then I'm going to use the mirror tool to mirror that. So we have that. And then we're going to add these two together, modify add surface. And now we're going to fix the fact that this is not a smooth curve down here. Select that, go to reshape. We're going to delete this point and this point so that now it's got a smooth curve. And then we can take, let's see which one. This is the bottom. We can drag the bottom back down all the way to the bottom, and then we can reshape this so that it's more like that. So there's our curve. This is looking a little thick right there, so maybe that, then this. Sometimes it just takes a little playing to get the shape right. I might actually want to make this a little thinner too. So now to make it symmetrical again, I'm going to draw a line holding that shift, a straight line in the center. Clip surface, delete the line and the right side and the box, and do a mirror, and then add those together. So there's our shape. Next, we'll extrude this. So model extrude, and we're going to go 22 inches deep. So that gives us this shape. And then in order to create the ribs, we're going to subtract the spaces that would be between each of the ribs. So if we go to front here, we're going to draw a rectangle that is the same size as the arc. And then we're going to make it 3/4 of an inch shorter, so minus 0.75, and then realign it with the bottom center. Then we're going to extrude this 3/4 of an inch. 0.75. Okay, and then go to top. Now we're going to make a duplicate array. So edit duplicate array, linear array. I think we want, let's start with 20 of them, which is probably too many. But and we want them to duplicate minus 1.5 inches with no rotation. That should be it. So linear array, 20 copies. With a Cartesian offset of y minus 1.5. So there's that. Yeah, that was too many, but that's okay, because we can just delete these. So this is really close. What we want now is to line this one up with the bottom there. And then select all of them. And do an align, modify, align, distribute. And we just want to distribute them by their spacing vertically. So they're all spaced out like that. And then because these want to be the holes, and right now they're in the space for where the wood should be. With these selected, grab this by its corner and move it down here. Which should leave you with one extra one here that you can delete. So just so that we can see what's going on. That's what we have right now. So then if you select all of that and do a subtract solids, making sure that the overall object is the solid to subtract from, then we're left with this. So there's our wood slatted arc base for the table. Now we're going to go to front and wireframe and create the glass. So we're going to use the rectangle tool, and we're going to put the glass just here in the center of the top solid piece. We're going to assume it's rabbited in or something. So start in the center there, and then come over to the center here, and then it's going to be tab, 1/4 inch glass at 0.25. So there's that, and then we can extrude that 22 inches, which is the thickness of the entire table. And then if we go to top, there that is. If yours isn't lined up like this, you can adjust it. So then the last thing to do to the table is to apply some textures. So for the top, we're going to look for green glass. And we want, oh boy, which one? Glass clear green RT, I believe. So we'll put that in the scenery textures folder. And then for the wood, let's try wood whoops, wood arrowway 004. We want the ash brown. I think these all appear to be the same, I guess, because I have several different files open. So the Arrowway Wood 004 ash brown is the one that I've been using for this. So there is our table. And then we want to turn this into a symbol. So modify, create symbol, coffee table. We do not want it inserted into walls. Can leave everything else the same for right now. There we go, and we'll put it in the scenery symbols folder. And then if we right click on this, we want to edit the 2D components. This is a different way of making a symbol. Previously we've drawn the 2D components ourselves. This is a slightly more automated way. So edit the 2D components, and then you have a list of which components you want, because you can actually do not just top view 2D. You can do, since Vectorworks 2018, I think, you can also generate 2D views for the other views. We're only going to do the top, but so you choose the top, and then right click, and you'll see generate 2D from 3D. Click on that, and it'll ask you how you want to do that, and you almost always want a hidden line rendering, and then click OK, and it'll think for a minute, and hopefully it will come up with this. So that's what the table looks like. So there we have our coffee table. We're going to move this over here, and because our none class, which all of this stuff is being generated in, is set to gray for all of our projects, this doesn't match the other symbols. I'm going to go ahead and for this project just set our none class to white. So in order to do that, if we go over to navigation and right click on none and edit it, we can change the fill solid color from its current to white, and click OK, and it should update everything that was created in that class to now be white. So while we're in this, let's adjust this chair a little bit so that it makes more of a realistic conversation setting. So if the table is sort of like that, I believe that's closer to the way they have them set up in the drawing that we're trying to emulate. So there is our coffee table, chairs, and wall. So back to our reference photo for a moment. So now we have the wall, we have the chairs, we have the tables, so we just need to add these accessories. So they've got a coffee pot set here, which we're going to turn into a teapot, a flower vase, and some magazines. And we're going to draw from the Vectorworks stock for almost all of these elements. So I've searched already, and there is not a coffee pot. However, there is a teapot. So if we search for tea, we'll find, look, it's the Utah teapot. So we're going to use that because last week. So if we double click on that, we can put it in the, we can put it in the drawing like this. And then if we look at this in front, OpenGL, you'll see that there's a lot of tea going on there. That seems like a very large teapot. So I'm going to double click on the symbol and edit the 3D component and do a couple of things. I'm going to select it all and scale it 75%. Oh no, I don't want to do the. This is good to note. You rarely want to scale the entire drawing. So let's try that instead. Okay, so that's smaller. And while we're there, I think it would look better if it were Chrome. So we can just go over to Render, select this, go over to Render, add a texture, and it's going to think for a second. Add a texture. Why is that not? Well, it seems like it did it, even though it. So that's Chrome. That's Chrome. That's Chrome. All right, I think the reason it's doing this is because some of these shapes can have different mapping types, and it's not letting me select it. This is being weird, but you can see that I grabbed it all, gave it a texture, and it's Chrome. So while we're here, I want to add a Chrome tray to this, just because that's sort of what's in the picture. So I'm going to start here and drag out to like right here, and I'm going to make this an 1/8 of an inch thick, and then maybe this one an 1/8 of an inch wide and 1.5 inches tall. So we're going to use that as a sweep. And then apply the Chrome to that. So now we have this. And then we're going to exit the symbol. And then make sure that it is sitting on the glass table. So there is our coffee pot. Yeah, so there it is on the table. The next thing was a vase, a flower vase. So let's see if we can find a vase. So a vase. There isn't one exactly like the one in the picture, but there's this one, which is a kind of sort of clear glass vase. So we're just going to use that. So we'll select that. We'll put it here. We're going to take a look. See how that looks scale-wise. If I look at this from a side view, I was hoping I was going to find a view where the chairs weren't in the way. Because there's a lot of geometry happening here. It's a little hard to tell where the top of the table is. I could go into OpenGL, I suppose. There. Okay, so that is now sitting on the table. Then we need some flowers to go in that. So we're going to just create an image prop. I found us some orchids. In web courses, there's an orchid texture, which is just a search for fake silk orchids, and that's an image, and then was taken into Photoshop, and the vase that it was in was photoshopped out. So if we go to download that image and bottle create image prop, we're going to import an image file. 3 feet tall. Everything else, we do want to use a mask. We're going to create the mask. We're going to reuse this prop's color. Okay. We're going to select a transparent color. It's going to be the white. This actually looks pretty good the way it is. We want to create crossed planes, and everything else can stay the same. And there the orchids are. Let's put them in the vase. And then go to top and make sure they're actually in the vase in that direction. So back to front. Maybe they should actually go down all the way to the bottom. Like that. That's better. Okay. And then finally, a magazine or two on the table. So if we search for magazine, it's like a newsstand. Actually, there is a newsstand. Pick one or two. What do we have that's good here? Let's do... Some of these are funny. I don't know. I'm going to just decide to use Learning by Design. That seems like an appropriate magazine for this class. We can put that right there. You could make a stack of them if you wanted. Rotate that a little bit. And look at this. And that should be... Oh, why does that have no... texture applied to it? It's supposed to have a texture applied to it. Interesting. Is it? Ah, it's upside down. Okay. Well, we can fix that. Rotate left. Rotate left. Okay, so now it's going in the other direction, but it should. There we go. Now we have that. So there is all of the completed geometry for the scene. The last thing we need to do with the geometry is to turn the display wall into a 2D, 3D hybrid. But before we do that, I want to take a look at a still from the video. The part of this, figuring this out, that was the most perplexing was figuring out how they did the grid on this wall. It's not at all intuitive. There's no setting in the line render mode to tell it to break it into a grid. And if you study this, what you'll notice is it seems to be broken into the original 8x8 grid that we started off the subdivision with. So I tried applying a grid texture to it, and that didn't work because of the way that Vectorworks applies textures. I tried just doing the line render mode. That would either give me just the outline of the wall, or if I change the settings, it would show me all of the little subdivisions in the the thousands of them in the final smoothed version. So finally, while trying to do something else, I happened upon converting this into NURBS, which seemed to break it up into these divisions. So if you select the object and then go to Modify, Convert, and convert it to NURBS, it will think for a minute, and it breaks it up into basically tiles that correspond, or at least seem to correspond, to the original 8x8 subdivisions. This OpenGL is set right now to show edges, so that's why we're seeing the lines. But if we look at this in a non-OpenGL mode, in a render mode that doesn't have show edges set, it looks just like it did before. It's the solid shiny object. So that seems to be, at least I'm guessing, that's how they broke this wall up to show these lines. And what the lines do for us in elevation in plan views is it shows us that the wall is curved. Because if you're looking straight at it from the front view, it's a little hard to tell what it looks like. So the next thing that we need to do is to take the wall, and now that it's broken up with the proper lines, and turn it into a 2D, 3D hybrid. Rather than doing that the way that we did the coffee table by turning it into a symbol and then having it generate the 2D geometry, we're going to do the same thing but in a different way. We're going to use the Create Auto Hybrid tool. So if you go to Spotlight, Architectural, Create Auto Hybrid, it doesn't work with groups. So that first you have to ungroup your NURBS. And so if you do that, you'll end up with 146 NURBS. Leave them all selected, and now go to saving is good now, because this next part's gonna take a minute. So go to Architectural and Create Auto Hybrid, and then wait. So that was an elapsed time of about 5 minutes for it to do that. And unfortunately, we have to do it again. And I knew this because the auto hybrid is set to automatically do a section cut at 4 feet above the floor. 4 feet above the floor, and there does not appear to be any way to set that in advance. We want to change that to 8 feet 6 because we don't actually want a cut section of this wall, because this is just a mess and doesn't really tell us anything. What we really want is to have a top view of it. But in order to have a top view, we need to create the auto hybrid above the wall, looking down on the wall, and really the only way to do that is to change the 4 foot cut plane to an 8 foot 6 cut plane, and then it's going to take the same 5 minutes again. But that's what we have to do. So change the cut plane elevation from 4 feet to 8 feet 6. And wait. So that was about 5 minutes again, but now we have the top view of the wall that we needed. So some of you will be able to do this, some of you won't, because it's pretty processor intensive. So if you can't do it, you can just leave the grouped NURBS together, and that will be what the top of it looks like. But if you are able to do the auto hybrid, this is what we actually want this to look like in top view. The last things we need to do before we start creating viewports and doing the rendering are to add a texture to the floor and to add a couple of lights. So in the video, oh, that's the wrong picture. So in the video, they have this interesting floor that actually is like the grid in Vectorworks. So I created this grid texture in Vectorworks and took it into Photoshop and cleaned it up a little bit, and gave you an image. So if you go to the resource manager and create a new resource, we're gonna do a RenderWorks texture and call this floor grid, and then find the image in web courses that is called graph paper full floor, and import that, and then just make this 30 feet square, which corresponds to the size of the actual floor. And then you can apply that to the floor. And let's look at that in OpenGL. Great. So there's what our floor looks like. Also in the video, in their rendering, the floor, let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Sort of fades out, the grid fades out in the background. So there are a couple of ways to do that, and they may very likely have done this in post, but a way that we can do that is by applying a transparency map to the floor. So we'll go back to the resource manager and go back to edit our floor grid, and we're going to go into transparency and we're going to do an image mask, and we want to import an image file, and this is going to be the floor transparency 2, transparent color, and the transparent color is the black. Is the black. So we need to sort of reverse that. So you click on the black, and now here we have our transparency mask. And now I'm going to set this so it fades out about, and I'm just changing the tolerance, so it fades out about in the middle like that. Let's see how that works. Okay. If we go back, so now we need to either rotate the map or rotate the floor. I think it's easier just to rotate the floor. So modify, rotate left. So now we have our floor fading out. So then we can take all of our objects and move them so that they're on the floor. Now we can insert a RenderWorks camera, and I'm going to put it about here, I think. I'm just going to put it right here in the corner. Let's try that to start. So we'll put that there, and then we'll activate the camera view, and that's actually pretty close. In the video, they're doing a little bit more of an overhead shot, so I'm going to actually rather than fine-tuning the camera here, I'm going to use I'm going to select the wall first, and then use the flyover tool to sort of manually adjust the view so that it's more like that. We're actually going to crop some of this out when we can just do that now, because we don't need it to fit to the page the way we normally do, because it's going to be part of another larger page. So I'm going to sort of crop it like that, and I'm going to go ahead and save this view. Perspective. Okay. So I've pasted in 2 lights from my previous go at this because it took me a while to figure out where to put these, and I wanted to be able to tell you what the actual settings should be. But so I used the lighting tool and inserted 2 spotlights. I click and point and click again. So one is here, and its settings are, it has a pan of -37 and a tilt of 66, and then its height, its Z, is 20 feet. I don't think the 2 inches makes any difference. So 20 feet, pan of 37, tilt of 66, and it's using the default spread of 60 and 30. And this one has cast shadows turned off. Then this one has cast shadows turned on and also soft shadows. And then its Z is the same, 20 feet, and its pan is 37, and its tilt is 66. So 20 feet high, 37 pan, 66 tilt. And then they're lined up as you see them here. So if we go back to our perspective, you can see that this is what our final view looks like. So now that we have, and when we do the final render, these lines won't show up. Now that we have this all set, what we can do is start laying out the final page. So if you happen to have a sheet layer already, you can use that. Otherwise, you can create a new sheet layer. But I already have one, so I'm going to go to that layer, and I'm going to put a title block in. So I'm going to go to the resource manager and title blocks. So in my file, you probably only have one open, but the title block styles, I'm going to use the 11x17 style and install it right there. So now I've got my title block, and you should fill in the information here. Call it project 8, put your name in, give it the right date, and of course you can change that information over here. The sheet data will change. We only have one sheet, but the sheet data will change the data, of course, on the individual sheet, and the project data will change the data that would be on every sheet. So back to scenery, and I'm going to go ahead and create a viewport. Create viewport. Create viewport. There we go. We're going to put it on the only sheet that's available. I'm going to change the scale from 1/2 inch to 3/8 inch. 1/2 inch is a little more standard, but to be perfectly honest, 3/8 inch will fit on the 11x17 paper that we've all been using, and it's difficult for me to help PC folks with their page setup to make a different size page because it depends on the individual computer. Macs are all the same, PCs are not, and it seems like all of you have got the 11x17 working, so we're just gonna go with what we have. So then if you just click OK and give it a minute, it will show up here on the page, and you'll notice that we've got the whole floor. We don't need the whole floor, so I'm going to double click on it and edit the crop. And right now it doesn't have a crop, so I'm going to give it a crop by just drawing a rectangle around the part of the drawing that I want to keep. So we'll exit that, and then if we go into annotations, we can put the drawing label up here where it belongs, there, like that. And then over in the viewport, we can give an actual title. So this is going to be ground plan. So there we have that. Then if we duplicate this, we can change the view here from top plan to front, and then we'll need to edit the crop again. We can drag this up. So there's our front view. And of course the front view should be aligned with the ground plan. So I'm going to draw a line up here so this back edge of the wall should be lined up right there. So I'm going to grab this by here and put it right there, and then nudge it down a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to edit the annotations now and move this up to here. And then I can go back to viewport and change the title from ground plan to front elevation. Like that. I can delete this line that I used to line them up. Actually, I could probably scoot this down a little bit. It's a little crowded. So we're more like that. And then I can duplicate this again, and we can change the view to left, and then we're going to need to change the crop again. Then we'll want to line that up. Oops. We'll want to line that up with the ground from the other one. Maybe go back this way a little bit. And we'll edit the annotations. Move this over here. Go back to viewport and change the drawing title to left elevation. These numbers don't make a whole lot of sense. If I had started, it should be, well, maybe they do. Ground plan 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll go with that. If you want to change them, you can change them over here, but you have to do a little manipulating, because if I wanted to change this to 1, it will tell me I already have a 1, and so then it will change the 1 to a 2, but there's already a 2, so you can do that. But it's best to create them in the order that you want them to be numbered. I was going to change them because it seems like that this should be 1 and this should be 2 and this should be 3, but honestly the ground plan being 1 and the front elevation being 2 and the left elevation being 3 also makes sense. So so that works. I would want to do some very limited dimensioning. Of the wall, which is really the only thing that's being built, because I think we can assume that coffee table would not be built. It would be purchased. So I think we want, that may be the only dimension that's really necessary there. We can dimension here if we wanted. And the reason that I'm not doing a lot of dimensioning is because something like this is not going to be built from dimensions. Honestly, you're going to send the computer file somewhere and it's going to be CNC routed or somehow constructed. In the old days, somebody would have carved it by hand out of foam, but I can't fathom that something like this these days anybody is going to make in any way other than by taking your 3D computer file and feeding it into a machine, because this is obviously a trade show display or something, and the amount of budget that these things usually have is going to allow computer controlled construction and not somebody with a chunk of styrofoam and a rasp making it. So these dimensions are mostly just to give an overall size. We could also put a scale person in here, and if you want to grab the scale person from the resource manager, they're there and there somewhere, and put them in, that's fine. But it just sort of gives you an overall idea of the size of the thing. So the final viewport that we need is the perspective view. So if we go back to here and go back to the perspective and then create viewport, view, create viewport. Perspective and scale don't really, its perspective is not in scale, so let's just see what size this turns out to be. Yeah, that's big. So actually it's really, it may not really be, yeah, it's big. So let's go ahead and change this to 3/8 as well. We can put that right there. And I'm going to crop this so that it stops right here. So we're going to crop, we're going to give it a crop to there. It's a good place for it too. And the perspective doesn't require really a label. You could label it drawing 4 perspective, but it's pretty obvious what that is. Actually, I should fix this crop so that it doesn't go over into the title block. So I'm going to adjust that like that. Okay, so far so good. Now we need to set some rendering modes. And something we need to do to clean the drawing up a little bit is to deal with this image prop. In these 3 drawings, which are going to be line drawings, we don't really want these rectangles to show up. If we had a line drawing of the flowers themselves, that would be one thing, but these rectangles don't belong here. So but they do belong here, so we don't want to get rid of them. So what we want to do is give them their own class. So if we go back to the drawing, and in classes, scenic, I'm going to add a new class called scenic flowers. Okay. So then we can put these flowers into the class scenic flowers. Then if we go back to our sheet layer, you'll notice that they have disappeared from all 4 of the drawings because that class didn't exist when we created these elevations, so it's going to be off. I do want to turn it back on here, though. So remember that the navigation, because you'll notice that it's on here, navigation classes have nothing to do with viewports. Viewports have their own control over classes and layers. So if I select this viewport and go to the classes tab, you'll see that here in scenic flowers it is indeed off, so I'm going to turn it on. So now it's on in this view but not on in the other views. That's one of the things that makes classes powerful, is you can have something there in one view and not on in another view by manipulating its class. So we're going to want to set some render styles. Some of you will be able to do this in final render and line drawings, and some of you are going to do it in OpenGL. So I'm going to do OpenGL first. So we're going to set all of these to OpenGL. So background render OpenGL. And then I want to change the settings. So on this one, I don't want to see the lines in the OpenGL. So I'm going to go to background render settings, and we are not going to draw edges in that particular version. And we want the shadows to be high. In these two, we want to show the lines, but we don't want to use colors because we want it to be black and white drawing like this drawing. So if we set that like that, and we're also going to crank up the lighting to make it brighter so that we're not, so it's more of just a line drawing. So here we are just going to draw edges. We're not going to use shadows. And then down here we can do lighting options individually for each viewport. I'm going to do these together, but lighting options, I'm going to go ahead and turn the ambient brightness all the way up to full. So now if I select all 3 of these, I'm going to do a save and update them. We'll wait a moment, or 5. And you'll see that we have the no line version here and the black and white version here. Now this isn't as nice as this. we can do two things here. We can up the DPI of our page. So we're going to go to the sheet layer and edit it and change this to 150, which will help a little bit. I also, now that I see this rendering, I'm going to move this box up so that it's lined up with the title block, and I actually want to send the title block to front so that the line is across there. So if we do this again, update, that looks a lot cleaner. So this is one way of doing this. And actually, this doesn't look bad at all. So if you need to do the OpenGL version, then that's what it'll look like, and it actually looks pretty good. The other option is to put this in the final RenderWorks. So we'll change this from OpenGL to RenderWorks style final, and we can change both of these to hidden line, hidden line, and we'll change the settings. The smoothing angle, we want to change to something above 1. If the smoothing angle is set at 1, it will show every little division. So in our subdivision wall, it'll show all the thousands of little divisions, and the same thing in the chairs. So I usually turn those up to about 45, and that's good to go. So now I'm going to render this, and this is going to take a while. So there we have it, our subdivision wall with its rendered perspective view and 2D other views. And I just realized that there's a discrepancy because I made an edit in the video. So this is what this ground plan should actually look like. This should all be white, and the table should be the symbol of the table, not the actual table. So this is what the final thing should look like. You should turn this into a PDF and turn it in.